Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. My name's Ollie, and I'm here from Kyan. Just a little bit about who we are. We are a product and innovation agency, and we work with people across a very, very wide range of sectors. And we work with people like yourselves. We work with innovators who want to make some changes. When people think of innovators, I think they often think of entrepreneurs, or they think of startups who are trying to build the next big shiny thing and change an industry, and we do that. But there's people like yourselves as well, intrapreneurs who are within a larger organization who understand that the way that things have always been done isn't necessarily the right way, and that maybe it's worth exploring new ways of doing things and new ideas. And you guys are up against a really interesting set of challenges, and we see it all the time. There's often things around technical architecture. Maybe you've got big monolithic legacy systems that are very hard to crack open and get the data out of. Perhaps there's structural concerns. People who are maybe lower down in the team don't feel like they can make their voices heard and get their ideas across. And there's often cultural issues as well. It's sometimes the case that the innovation is seen as a bit of a dirty word. It's something that's going to suck up a lot of time, and it's going to suck up a lot of money, and it won't necessarily produce anything at the end. And done badly, that's true, and that's a shame. But it doesn't have to be. Innovation's almost become a synonym for risk. And if businesses are anything, they're often risk averse, and it therefore doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen properly. And it's easy to see why. There's plenty of high-profile failures of digital products over the years that either just cost the business a lot of time or cost the business a lot of money, or even worse, there's negative press around it. And that's obviously something that needs to be avoided, and it's understandable. And it's often the product of a process that looks a bit like this. It might be something you're familiar with. There's a big idea at the start, which is great. And sometimes that big idea is amazing. It's the right idea. And sometimes perhaps it misses the mark, but often it's tripped up by that middle section, lots of work. It can sometimes take 9, 12, even 18 months to get a digital product out of the door. And during that process, it's not been exposed to users. It's just been internal. Maybe it's a little bit too internally focused. And until it hits the fail or succeed stage, it's too risky in terms of whether it actually will fail or whether it's going to succeed. And that lots of work is seen as the wasted time. And that's where the changes can come in. And a lot of the time, why these products fail is because of the users. Maybe something's been produced and you've put it out in the market, and it just doesn't quite meet that user need. We're a very user-centric agency when it comes to developing products, and often we see users come to a product that's been developed for a very long time and just bounce off it because it doesn't quite match their expectations or the apps and services that they're already using, and doesn't fit into their lifestyles properly. And it's a problem that a lot of different businesses face. And why is user expectation increasing so fast? Well, you can kind of blame our hosts for tonight for that one. We all use apps and services all the time, every day, that on our iPhones, we order a car to take us somewhere that then uses Google Maps to get there seamlessly. And if you actually stop and think about how much technology has gone into that, it blows the mind a little bit. I mean, I've kind of now taken it for granted that I can find my nearest Nando's in less than 10 seconds. But the amount of work that's gone into me finding a Nando's is enormous, and yet it's at my fingertips all the time. And we start to take these things for granted, and we start to just use them naturally because they're so intuitive and they're so seamless. So when we come across a product that isn't, it's really jarring, and it really affects us in the way we want to use it. And initially, we expected all these companies to come out with these apps and to come out with these services, and that was fine, and we didn't demand that from our other industries. But increasingly, that's changing. If you look at the world of financial services and take the likes of Monzo, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, they've turned banking, which I've always seen as something that's a bit staid and a bit stodgy, and they've made it more fun, and they've made it more accessible to people, and they've just become the newest unicorn in the stable that exists out there. And the reason for that is user experience. It's clean, it's simple, and it's easy. And it's something that we hear quite a lot, is that we're not a technology company. And it's true, you guys aren't technology companies, and no one would expect you to be technology companies. But you need to start thinking like one in order to produce digital products and digital services that are going to match your users' expectations. It's no point thinking of Airbnb as a short-term letting company. They're not. They're a technology company that happens to offer some nice properties. There's no point thinking of Uber as a taxi company, because they're not. They're a technology company that happens to do lift sharing. And while no one would expect you guys to necessarily have those digital skills in-house, the digital products you produce do need to adhere to those same tenets and those same principles. So what we try and do at Kyan is we try to de-risk that process as much as possible. And we do that with a process that looks a lot like this. Now, it's something you might well have seen. There's a good chance of that. It's not exactly industry secrets up there. But too often it's ignored and it's not adhered to. And that's why you get products that feel a little bit more clunky and not as refined as they could be. And it all starts with discover, which is possibly the most important part of that process. And the whole idea behind discovery is that if you can get your industry expert in a room with a product team that's done similar things before, maybe in different industries, and brings different knowledge with them, and importantly, you marry that with some real users, people who are season ticket holders, people who are 2-day-a-week travelers, people who would get the train, but they tend to drive because they think it's easier. Getting that mix of different people and different types of customer in the room and talking about what they do and don't like is a hugely important thing to do. And too often it's just not done. It just helps to validate thinking, it helps to validate ideas, and discovery is all about ideas. You guys face a number of different challenges, and being able to prioritize those and find the ones that are going to make the biggest difference is a big part of the process, and a really important one as well. And once you have something, once you've identified the main challenge, you've talked about that, and you've come up with a few different ideas as a team, then we can start to work on those. We tend to run very short sprints in a day, maybe 45 minutes to an hour long, to go into more depth into some of those ideas, to really explore what they could look like and what could come out of them. And the ones that show the most merit and pass a few tests will go into a prototyping phase. Now, prototyping, I don't want you to all think of hand-drawn line, black and white pictures, because people tend to find those hard to process. We do hand-draw some things internally, but they're to verify them for ourselves. Prototyping should be around producing something that, in a tightly controlled demo, you could persuade a user was already real. Because what that will allow you to do is to test certain assumptions. Test if the feature set you thought was going to be the absolute killer feature of this new product is actually that. Or if users kind of go, yeah, that's fine. And actually, this is where we really want to spend our time. And it really helps to refine and validate the ideas that have come out of that first discovery session, make them semi-real, and then prove that they are valid. And the important thing to note here is that discovery and prototyping shouldn't take more than 2 to 4 weeks. So the whole idea there is that that investment in both time and money is far, far lower than spending months and months and months developing what felt like a good idea, only to find out that it just misses the mark slightly. That's a really, really important process. Because once you're able to validate that, once you're able to verify that the ideas you've had are correct and that users are going to resonate with that, then you can go through into a launch. You can start putting some meat on the bones that you've already begun. You can put code together, front ends, whatever it needs to be. Maybe it's an app, maybe it's just a service, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But you can go into that build phase knowing that you've proved that this is going to work. You know there's a business case there. And it just helps to take away that risky portion that people would otherwise possibly balk at. And we're not saying that during the launch phase that you should stop thinking and changing things, because you shouldn't. You should always still be testing that with users. You should always be asking people if it's the right thing to do, because it might be that you need to just refine a few features or put that extra 10% into one part of it. And that's fine. That's an expected part of development. But all of this is about verifying that it's the right thing to do. I can't stress that enough. And what you get is a process that looks a bit like this. You get several different ideas. Some of them will be great ideas, and they're the ones you're going to take forwards. Some will be good ideas, but they might not be for now. Maybe they're for a bit later on. And maybe a couple of them go into prototype, but there's only really one that you're looking to launch now. But what's really nice about this process is that it's repeatable. You can go back every 3 months, whatever it might be, every 6 months, and just repeat the same process, bring in different areas of the business, bring in the same areas of the business. It depends where the challenges lie. And keep going and keep going and keep iterating and improving until you get to where you want to be. Because the big secret is that innovation isn't necessarily some big sea change from point A to point B. It's lots of little changes that get you there. You're not going to get it right first time. You're not going to get it right in some big sweeping motion. You'll get it right by getting it wrong, because that's how you learn the lessons of what does work and what doesn't work. And that's a huge part of it. I think for you guys in particular, there's challenges around sort of brand awareness. Now, it's definitely something that's on the rise. I see far more adverts for all travel companies, and it's definitely something that's improving. But for someone like myself who travels up to London 2 or 3 times a week, I know the route. I commute to the same place every time, and yet I always go to Google Maps to see if my train's on time. I don't go to your individual services. I think there's a lot of people that jump on planes, jump on coaches. They don't know what network they're on. They're just jumping on the nearest one because that's the one they always go to. So how you bring those people into your digital experiences is something that's a real challenge, and you need to offer them some real value around what it is they're doing and fitting into their day-to-day lives. I know that I can pre-book train tickets online. It's not a big secret. I know I can do it. I know it's convenient, and I know I probably will get it cheaper because I'm pre-booking. But I don't do it because it's not easy for me. It's not a simple thing for me to do. I have to go and find it somewhere. Whereas if I have a digital product which allows me to perhaps pick up my regular tickets just with one tap, because it already knows who I am, it already has my payment details, and then keeps me updated as to whether my normal train is on time or not, that's something that adds value to me. But at the moment, I just go to services that I know exist. So yeah, some real challenges that I think can be solved with some iterative thinking and some workshopping around all of that. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that it's important that you find products that your users actually want to use, rather than developing something in isolation or in a vacuum and then presenting it to your users and them deciding that actually it's not for them. So if you did want to talk to me about anything to do with what I've just spoken about afterwards, or you want to argue with me about anything I've just spoken about afterwards, I'm sticking around for a drink, so thank you for listening.